retinal detachment. Now, the important thing starts from the name itself. When I say that it is retinal detachment, as I always say that abbreviations are very, very important in ophthalmology, and you should always know what that abbreviation mean, because I don't know about other subjects also. Ophthalmology is one subject where you have lot of abbreviations, and most of the cases the options are giving you abbreviations only, so you will be confused if you are not in a habit of using the abbreviations from before. So that's why I keep a habit of taking these things in the form of short forms only. Don't say retinal detachment always, rhegmatogenous. So you should be very, very familiar with RRD, ERD, TRD, PVD, PVR, VKH, VKC. So there are so many things in ophthalmology like this. Okay, so first of all, retinal detachment is a misnomer. And why it is important? Because it is a severe condition, like it's a ultimate ophthalmic emergency. We don't have many ophthalmic emergencies, but as I always say, whatever are the emergencies in ophthalmology are really, really emergent. We have to work really, really fast. So this retinal detachment is also an emergency. Then what should be your order of priority? Whenever there is urgency, whenever there is emergency, always follow the order. First save the life, then save the eye, and then come to the vision. So this is our priority list, and as I always say that a physician may be happy just by saving the life, but we as ophthalmologists are not happy until we save the eye, and especially the vision. So you have to be working many-fold here. Now, why actually it's a misnomer? So let us see the definition of retinal detachment. If you look at the definition, it is actually a separation. It is a separation of the RPE layer from neurosensory retina, right? Now let's quickly revise the layers of retina. The outermost layer was the RPE layer. This is the outermost layer, right? And rest of the 9 layers will form the neurosensory retina. And what is the thing that we always draw in between them? We have the subretinal space. We have a subretinal space between the 2 layers. So actually speaking, when I say the retina, we actually have one neurosensory retina. These are the broader one, which contains 9 layers, and then I have a RPE layer, and we have a separation. See, this is the separation between the 2. This is your subretinal space. Now, when this space increases, this is called as retinal detachment. So basically, it's a misnomer. It is not a detachment. It is not a detachment, rather a separation. So actually speaking, it is not a detachment. It is just a separation, which is normally also present. But normally we have got a small subretinal space, and when this space increases, the amount of the fluid which is present between the 2, that is your subretinal fluid, that increases. Then we say that it is the retinal detachment. Now, before understanding this separation and detachment, you should know what is the extent of retina. So let me draw a diagram here. This is the iris. Then we have ciliary body, right? And as you know, I always follow the color code. So ciliary body will continue into the choroid. Red one is the choroid, and outer is the sclera, black one, right? And here we have the lens. and innermost. Now here, this is important. Now at the junction of the ciliary body and the choroid, at the junction of ciliary body and the choroid, we have the starting of the retina, which is uneven, right, like this, and then it is going backward like this. So I will be drawing the thicker one, because we know that there are something like this 10 layers of the retina, okay, and out of these 10 layers of the retina, only one layer continues to form the optic nerve. So this is our optic nerve, right? So what should be the extent of the retina? Starting is from ora serrata and it is going up to here. This is your optic disc margin. So extent of the retina is from ora serrata to the optic disc margin. This is also MCQ in itself. Now what is ora serrata? Ora means origin, okay, and serrata means uneven. So it is the uneven origin where ora serrata is there, and it is present at the junction of the ciliary body and the choroid. Retina is continuing backward, okay, and then only one layer continues to form this optic nerve. So we can say that retina is extending from the ora serrata to the optic disc margin. So why I am saying that it is not a detachment? Because it is not detaching from ora serrata, it is not detaching from the optic disc from here and from here. It is just the separation of the layers which is taking place. That's why it's a misnomer. Okay, now we'll be talking about the types of the retinal detachment. Types of the retinal detachment, we have got three types: RRD, then we have ERD, and we have TRD. Now we will be talking about these three RDs. What are the important things? What are the most common questions which are repeated from this? Like this time we got a question in NEET 2020 from this ERD, shifting fluid science. So we'll be talking about that also, because I think now slowly and gradually next pattern is going to come, and the number of questions of the ophthalmology is increasing many-fold. Like if I consider about 10 to 15 questions in the today's practice, they are asking about 60 questions in the next pattern. So obviously when the number of questions will increase, the number of questions coming from high yield topics as well as from other topics will also increase. So if I was expecting one question from retinal detachment, up till now at least they will be doubling. It can be even thrice. So this retinal detachment is an important topic, and especially I think the paper that was conducted this year, NEET 2020 paper, is a milestone one, turning up, because that showed so many things. That was a glimpse of the next, and all those topics which were covered in this NEET 2020 are, I think they are the important ones, and you should always look for them. And even if there is a minute detail about these topics which you are missing, so that should not be missed, and especially if it is related to a clinical thing. Okay, so let's start with the RD. So first is your rhegmatogenous. RRD is the rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. Then we have exudative retinal detachment, and then we have tractional retinal detachment. And as I always say, don't try to ratify the things. If you go with even with the literal meaning of the words, you will grasp the meaning, and it will always be easier for you to follow the concepts of that thing. So out of the three, the most common is this rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. So I'll be talking first about this RRD. Now if you split the words, it is rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. Now what is the meaning of rhegma? Rhegma means a break. So here the main key word is a retinal break, retinal tear, or I can say a retinal hole. So whenever in the question you read about a retinal hole, a retinal break, retinal tear, that means they are talking most probably about rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. So So basically this RD is related to the break or a hole in the retina. So most of the times this break is actually leading to the retinal detachment. Now, what are the risk factors which people have a risk of developing this RD? Then we will be discussing the pathogenesis. So this kind of RD is developed in those people who have this retinal break or who have a tendency of developing this retinal break. So first of all, it will be old age, because as the age advances, we will see that due to the vitreoretinal traction, the chances of the break increases. I will show you how. So it is old age. Then it has been found that it is more common in males. This RD is more common in males. Then a trauma. I think this is very important. Reverse in trauma also, when we study the blunt trauma, actually it is the blunt trauma, right? So when we study the blunt trauma, what are the things that take place? There also we write that rhegmatogenous retinal detachment is common. Similarly, we have high myopia. All those people who are having high myopia, pathological myopia, or the degenerative myopia, and rather it is the most common complication of this high myopia. Then those people who do not have the lens, aphakia, or who have undergone the cataract surgery. So it can be pseudophakia. All those people who have intraocular lens implantation, who have undergone the cataract surgery, and which cataract surgery? Especially the ICCE. This has more chances in comparison to ECCE, but you will say that we do not do ICC nowadays. Yes, it is obsolete, and one of the reasons why it is not used nowadays is also this retinal detachment, because we had this risk of retinal detachment due to the ICCE, and that is why now we are not doing this ICCE. And we also rate this in the late post-operative complications. If you remember, in the late post-operative complications of the cataract surgery, RD is a possible complication. And if you remember, I always say that this is actually more common in the children. If you remember, why? Because of the dense adhesions. In children, always the adhesions are much stronger. There is a V-girt ligament. Remember, we were having a V-girt ligament, and this V-girt ligament was attachment between the posterior capsule. It was between the posterior capsule of the lens and the anterior hyaloid membrane. Now this is again a very important MCQ. We have a very dense adhesion between the lens. If you remember, this was the lens, and this was your anterior hyaloid membrane, and there was a dense attachment between these two. This was called as the V-Girt's ligament. And what was the other name? It was called as hyaloidocapsular ligament. And many times they will ask you what are the attachments of this ligament. So if you remember this name, it will be very easy for you. Hyaloido means anterior hyaloid membrane, and capsular means it is the posterior capsule of the lens. So because these adhesions are much stronger in cases of children, and that is why RD is also more common in cases of children. And that's why, if you remember, what is preferred in the children? What was preferred in children? That's why what we prefer in children is your lensectomy along with the anterior vitrectomy. We prefer lensectomy along with the anterior vitrectomy. We try to remove these adhesions, free the lens from the all areas, and then we try to do the extraction of the lens so that we do not have the risk of the retinal detachment. Okay. Now, another important thing is that this retinal detachment can also be bilateral. So if one eye is having the retinal detachment, there are high chances that we can have this retinal detachment in the other eye. So how much is the chances? So if you talk about the people who have the lens, that means phakia. if the person are phakic, then there are 15% chances of getting the bilateral involvement. But if the person is having aphakia or pseudophakia, means there is extraction of the lens with or without implantation of the PCIOL, then it is 33%. 1/3 of the cases can have the retinal detachment in the other eye. So that is again a very, very important thing. Okay. So we have covered with the age, the gender, the trauma, the myopia, aphakia, pseudophakia. Another important risk factor is your retinal degenerations. If we have already so many degenerations in the retina, obviously the degenerated retina will be having more chances of traction, therefore more chances of the break, especially the lattice degeneration. This is again a multiple times asked question, which kind of degeneration is very, very important. It is the lattice degeneration which is more important in causing this. So these were some of the high risk factors, and as I say, risk factors are always important, and risk factors of retinal detachment and especially the RRD are very, very important. Now they often ask you what is not a risk factor. They often ask you what is not a risk factor of this RRD. So there the answer is the hyperopia. Hyperopia or the hypermetropia is not a risk factor of the retinal detachment because we require the degenerations, and hypermetropia is not known to be a degenerative disorder. Myopia is known to be a degenerative disorder. That is why their answer is hypermetropia. So this is one all except kind of question, my favorite, that is asked with respect to the risk factors. Now let us see what is the pathogenesis. Why actually it is more common in the old age. Okay, so first of all, what happens due to the old age? Due to the old age, you must have heard that there is something called as synschisis. Schisis means splitting. Synschisis or splitting. So we have splitting of the vitreous. Due to the old age, we have splitting of the vitreous, or it is also called as the liquefaction. So it starts getting liquefied. Normally, you know, vitreous is gel-like, and now due to aging, it is getting liquefied. It is getting splitted. Now due to this liquefaction, after some time there occurs syneresis. Now can you differentiate between two terms? One was synschisis and another is your syneresis. So they can be asked separately also, what are the meanings? Synschisis was the liquefaction, and this is physiological because I am talking just due to the old age. I am not talking about synschisis scintillant that was occurring due to inflammatory diseases or the vascular diseases. Syneresis means there is a collapse of the vitreous. So when there is a collapse of the vitreous from the vitreous cavity, what will happen? Suppose this was your vitreous cavity, this was the lens here, and here we were having this vitreous gel-like, right? So it has gone liquefied like this, and now it is collapsing here. So what it will do, it will start separating from the retina. So this can actually lead to the PVD. What is PVD now? This is your posterior vitreous detachment. So there can be posterior vitreous detachment. Now your next question will be, why ma'am posterior vitreous detachment? Why not anterior? Why? Because I always tell you that the posterior vitreous membrane is loosely attached to the retina. We always draw this dotted one. So the posterior vitreous membrane does not have any ligament. It is loosely attached. So when we have liquefaction, we have collapse, syneresis, then there are more chances of the detachment of the vitreous from the posterior aspect. We have posterior vitreous detachment, we have PVD. Now this PVD is important because it can lead to Weiss ring. This is again important. What is this Weiss ring? Weiss ring means the person can have a single floater or a solitary floater. If a person is just seeing single floater, that is called a solitary floater. This is due to the PVD. Now there is a detachment of the vitreous. Due to the detachment of the vitreous, there will be retinal traction. Vitreoretinal traction. So this is actually exerting the traction on the retina, and this is actually the key word, I will say. This is the key word why the hematogenous retinal detachment is taking place. This vitreoretinal traction is actually leading to the retinal hole, retinal break, or whatever you call it as retinal tear. So this is how we have seen that why old age patients have more chances, or those who have already degenerations where we have overstretching. Now we can have different shapes and different locations, but I will talk about most common. So what is the most common shape and the most common site? Most common shape is something like this. This is your horseshoe shape. Horseshoe shape. And most common site is supratemporal quadrant. So this is actually the central idea how the retinal break is taking place, but still we have not got the point that how break is leading to retinal detachment now. Now suppose this was your vitreous cavity, okay, and this was your RPE layer. And suppose I say that this is your neurosensory retina, rest of the 9 layers like this, and here we have this lens, okay. Now in between the 2 layers we have the fluid, the subretinal fluid. This is what we have studied till now. Now suppose I say that there is a hole here. Now as soon as we say that there is a hole here, now what will happen? Now this vitreous is already liquefied, collapsed. So what will happen? Now this fluid will go through this hole and it will start collecting in between the 2 layers. So it is actually the fluid present in between these 2 layers which are responsible for increased separation, and therefore now this will start detaching and it will become something like this, because now fluid is collecting here. So this is how the fluid which is going from the vitreous and it is collecting between the 2 layers, that is RPE layer and the neurosensory retina, that is responsible for creating the retinal detachment. So have you understood how old age is connected, how the synchiasis, then syneresis, like these are the keywords, and then PVD, the vitreoretinal traction is leading to the break, and break is leading to this RD. Now if I say that the fluid from this vitreous is going here, so here we will have decreased vitreous volume. Obviously we can have decreased vitreous volume, and this explains the decreased intraocular pressure in the retinal detachment. So if it's a large RD and large amount of fluid has gone in between the layers, the amount of the decrease in the intraocular pressure will be very, very less, and this explains the decrease in intraocular pressure, the hypotony, and sometimes it can also lead to the phthisis bulbi. It can also lead to the phthisis bulbi. So one of the complications of the retinal detachment can be decreased intraocular pressure, hypotony, and the phthisis bulbi. Okay, now what else is happening? Now 50% of the patients will have more than one break. So even if you have searched for one break, you should not be satisfied, because one thing should always be there in your mind, that we can have even more than one break. So searching for the break, I think, is a important activity whenever you are managing a case of hematogenous retinal detachment. Now there are 2 more terms with respect to this retinal break. One is called as the joint retinal tear. What is this joint retinal tear? Now if it is a joint, obviously it has to be a large one. So if it is occupying more than one quadrant of the whole circumference, so if I take the circumference of the eye and I am dividing it into the 4 quadrants like this. So if it is going or occupying more than one quadrant, then I will say that it's a giant tear. Similarly, there is another thing called as the retinal dialysis. Retinal dialysis. Now, retinal dialysis, if you remember, when I told you about iridodialysis, it is always a detachment from its root. So, retinal dialysis is also the detachment of the retina from its root. Now, what is its root? So, the root is ora serrata. So, if there is a detachment, from the ora serrata, then it is called as the retinal dialysis. So what is a giant retinal tear? What is the pathogenesis of a break? How vitreoretinal traction is taking place? What is retinal dialysis? These are the important things that takes place in the RRD. Now, we will be talking about the other things. What are the clinical features and how will this patient present? Because we will be thinking about this only when I start thinking in terms of the retinal detachment. So what is the main thing that should give me a clue that this can be a case of retinal detachment? So first of all, this patient will come with the sudden painless diminution of vision, and as I always say, this is the most important ED, because in every question which is related to the ophthalmology, they will always tell you that there is diminution of vision, whether it is acute, whether it is chronic, sudden, gradual, painful, painless, progressive, stationary. So that is the starting thing. One thing you have to learn, that how to approach the MCQ, the skill of doing MCQ. Like you must have heard so many toppers also talk about this. Recently we had a session with the Shiv Kumar, we had a session with Shobit, and they also said that try to develop that skill of doing MCQ. See, I have also listened to them more carefully than you people do, so that I can extract important things and tell it to you. So that skill of doing the MCQs, the skill of doing the MCQs means how to grasp that clue point, that where the examiner wants to take. So always start, whether it is gradual painless diminution of vision, or it is sudden painless, sudden painful, like this. So if I know that it is a sudden painless diminution of vision, what I tell you every time, always remember about your posterior segment. So this will always start with the sudden painless diminution of vision. Start thinking about posterior segment. Like we have a arterial occlusion, venous occlusion, CSR, CME. There are so many things here which will give you the sudden painless diminution of vision. Now here we are having two important things. We are having the retinal as well as the vitreous degenerations. We are having the degenerations, we are having the traction there. So due to this, due to the retinal traction, because we have the irritation of the retina, it is electrical tissue. What is the important thing that is taking place? That is the photopsia. While due to the vitreous degeneration, what is the important thing that we are having is the floaters. And that is why I always say that photopsia and floaters are the key points of the RRD. If they are saying that it is a case of detachment and they are talking about photopsia and floaters, undoubtedly they are talking about the RRD. Like nothing can be the cause. Neither the tractional RD nor the exudative RD will give you photopsia and floaters, because what is photopsia? Photo plus opsia. Photo means the light and opsia means the images. So basically we have the flashes of light which are coming in front of the eye, just like sparking which occurs at the welding arcs. So that kind of a thing is coming, and this cannot come until we have that traction. Plus we have vitreous degeneration, so that vitreous degeneration can lead to floaters. If you have PVD, we will have single floater, and that single floater will give you the wise ring. Okay, another important thing is that because here the nutrition is affected. So because the nutrition is affected here, that is why this patient can also develop the complicated cataract. This patient can also develop the complicated cataract, because many a times when we study the retinal detachment as a cause of the complicated cataract, one thing always come to our mind, that why there is cataract in a patient. So this is occurring in a long standing cases. Whenever we have the long standing cases of the retinal detachment, whenever we have the long standing cases of the retinal detachment, one thing can certainly take place, and that is the complicated cataract. Complicated cataract that was common in chronic anterior uveitis, also high myopia. We have got these long-standing cases of retinal detachment. We have inflammatory conditions, we have degenerative conditions, retinitis pigmentosa, intraocular tumors. So tumors and retinal detachment or any other thing that is causing the compromise to the nutrition, that is actually leading to the complicated cataract. So this is one of the complication. Like you have already seen, the phthisis bulbi was one complication. Second is your complicated cataract. Then another complication can be uveitis. Even uveitis can occur, and this uveitis can again lead to the secondary glaucoma. So even we can have the secondary glaucoma. But if they ask you what is the most common or most important, the most important complication of the retinal detachment is your PVR. Even the cataract surgery, the detachment surgery, the retinal detachment surgery we are doing, that is also carrying the risk of this PVR. This is very, very important. So what is this PVR? This is your proliferative vitreoretinopathy. Proliferative vitreoretinopathy. So whenever we have this retinal detachment, always look for proliferative vitreoretinopathy, because actually traction was responsible for brake, and brake has then led to the RD. So you have to solve the question according to this. This PVR is very, very important. Now we have seen the sudden painless diminution of vision, we have seen photopsia, we have seen floaters. Now what are the other things? Now I am doubting that it was a sudden painless diminution of vision, it was showing photopsia and floaters. Now I have already in my mind that this person can be having retinal detachment, and that too rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. Now what are the things that I should look for? So let us see what are the signs that I am getting in this patient. So first of all, I can start with the distant direct ophthalmoscopy. Now first of all, what is distant direct ophthalmoscopy? I think in the future we'll be doing only distant direct and indirect, because they are done at a distance. So distant direct ophthalmoscopy means when I am doing this direct ophthalmoscopy from a distance. Now there are different criteria, like some people say 33 centimeter or some say 40 centimeter. So anyhow, when we are doing this direct ophthalmoscopy from a distance, minimum distance, that is called as a distant direct ophthalmoscopy. So I'll be getting a grayish reflex. So normally the red reflex that is present will not be there, and I'll be getting a grayish reflex. And this is other way around also. That means if I am doing the distant direct ophthalmoscopy in a patient and I am not getting a reddish reflex, or I am getting a grayish reflex, that is always a alarming sign. That is always an alarm button. Never consider it to be a normal. Grayish reflex is never normal. So always remember. Then second thing, we also get the Schaffer's sign. Now Schaffer's sign is again important, because you are not going to get this in other RDs. This is the presence of the pigments. We are going to get the pigments in the anterior vitreous because of the degenerations. We will be having the dispersal of the pigments and they will be found. It is just like dusting of the pigments in the anterior vitreous. Therefore, it is also called as the tobacco dusting sign. It is also called as the tobacco dusting sign. Like this time they have asked you the shifting fluid sign. Next time they can ask you the Schaffer's sign or this tobacco dusting sign. What else? The third important thing, the person can have a curtain-like effect. Now this is again very interesting. A curtain-like effect means when the retina is detaching, it is falling in front of the patient's visual field in the form of a curtain like this. So this falling of the retina in the visual field, like what happens at the stage, slowly and gradually the curtain falls. So patient also feels the same, that a curtain is falling in front of the eye. That is called as a curtain-like effect. So we have done the Schaeffer's sign, we have seen this tobacco dusting sign, or the Schaeffer's sign, we have seen the grayish reflex, the curtain-like effect. Now what about the RAPD? Yes, RAPD will be present in all the three type of RD. So this is again a very, very important point. You will get RAPD. Now how to compare? Photopsia and floaters was one important thing, because it will not be found in any other RD. Then look for the mobility. Mobility of the retina is again an important thing. Mobility will be present. Here what will happen? The retina will show the folds. So retinal folds will be there, and these folds will oscillate with the eye movements. So mobility is not affected here, and whenever the patient will make the eye movements, these undulations or these folds will also show the mobility. Okay, now if they ask you that what is most important for testing the retinal detachment, suppose they say that what is most important for testing the retinal detachment, then answer will be indirect ophthalmoscopy. Why? Because I need to do this indirect ophthalmoscopy in order to search the retinal tear. Once you are confirmed, even when you have confirmed the retinal detachment by the ultrasound, we will be doing the ultrasound for confirming A scan, B scan ultrasound. Again, I will have to do the direct ophthalmoscopy to search for the retinal tear, because I know that most of the cases of the RRD comes with the retinal tear. But why do I need to search it? Because I will have to seal it. If you are not sealing it, then the chances of that redetachment are very, very high. So how to search this retinal tear? For searching, another very, very important thing is the Linkoff rule. Now Linkoff rules are very, very descriptive, and he has given very many rules that if RD is in this quadrant, tear will be there. But what is the most important thing? What is the concept? The concept of the Linkoff rule says that it can be searched according to the configuration. You have to search the break according to the configuration of the RD. So what you have to do? First, look for the highest point. Whatever is the highest point of the RD. So in 98% of the cases, you will get the break within the 1.5 clock hours. Now this is very, very simple, and I think a very important thing. Whenever you get a RD and I want to search for the break, how should I go? Look at the highest point of the retinal detachment. Suppose this is the highest point superiorly. If I am having a superior RD, that means your break will be about 1.5 hours here or here. So it will be around 12 o'clock. So search for your RD near 12 o'clock, like it can be from 11 to 12 or it can be from 12 to 1. Lowest point here. So search around 6 o'clock. Then you will get either here or you will get either here. So this is a very, very important clue point which will give you the tear most of the times, and you have to search it. Second thing, always remember that we can have the two tears also. So just by getting one, don't get complacent, search for the other. Third important thing, when you search for this tear, we actually do the indirect ophthalmoscopy. Now in indirect ophthalmoscopy, what type of image is formed? It is real, it is inverted, and it is magnified. It is real, it is inverted, and it is magnified. So magnification is very, very less here. That is your 5 times, but I'm not concerned about this at the moment. I'm concerned that this image is real and inverted. Now because this image is real and inverted, we tend to get confused. There is a high possibility because you see the tear in exactly opposite quadrant to which it is present. So what is the good way? When you do the indirect ophthalmoscopy, make a diagram. So we make the descriptive diagram and don't invert it. Draw exactly the way you are seeing. Exactly the way you are seeing. And suppose this was your 12 o'clock and this was your 6 o'clock, this was 3 o'clock, this was 9 o'clock. After doing it, then completely reverse it, flip it, and then that will be the real picture of the retina. So that is the ideal way we do the things before going for the surgery, otherwise it will be whole a mess. Okay, now another important thing, how to look for the old RD, because many a times the person may not be coming to you just as the RD occurs, and he may be coming to you late. So how to know that it's an old RD? So you will have two things. One is your retinal thinning. Retinal thinning will be evident. This will be due to the atrophy. Retinal thinning due to the atrophy. And secondly, you will see the high water marks. High water marks. Now, what is this high water marks? High water marks means that you will see a subretinal demarcation line. Subretinal demarcation line. Now, this is again an important thing for your question, that if they say that high water marks is visible, subretinal demarcation line is visible, then what are you thinking? We are thinking about the old RD. Now, why this is taking place? This is taking place due to the proliferation. So from where this proliferation is there? Proliferation from the RPE. Obviously, the pigmentary layer is that, and that is at the junction. So at the junction where we have the detached retina and we have the other side, that demarcation point, we have the proliferation from the RPE cells, and that gives you this demarcation line called as the high watermark. So this is again a very, very important thing. Now, once you have done this, now we will try to confirm. How will you confirm the diagnosis? So basically, we confirm this diagnosis by the B-scan ultrasound, and I will also help you to understand how actually A-scan also helps in confirming this ultrasound. So we are doing B-scan along with the A-scan ultrasound. Let us see what happens. First of all, what is the meaning? A-scan means amplitude scan, while B-scan means brightness scan. Now, undoubtedly, this is again very, very important. As I always say, it's a very technology driven subject. So one question, and afterwards you will see that from next even 2 to 3 questions will be there from the tests as well as the investigations part. So we have the B scan and we have A scan. Now A scan is actually the unidimensional, one-dimensional ultrasound, while the brightness scan is your two-dimensional ultrasound. Okay, so obviously when we have the two-dimensional ultrasound, I am able to see the 2D picture of the eyeball, so it's easier to interpret. But if it is an amplitude scan and it's a one-dimensional one, I am not able to see. So here I am able to see only the spikes. Here I am able to see only the spikes. So how will it help? So let me show you how actually it helps. Okay, now see here. This is the first thing that you are going to see in the retina. Okay, now we are able to do the ultrasound. This was another case here. This was also one case where we could see the retinal tear here, and this is the area where we have detachment, not the red reflex is present here, right? Now we are doing the B scan ultrasound. Now let us see how to read these ultrasound scans. First of all, can you see this area? This is a black area. This is the shadow of optic nerve. So because the waves are not able to pass through this area, That is why it is appearing black. And this shadow that you can see, this is the lens shadow. Okay, now what is this? This is your optic disc area. What was the extent of the retina? From the optic disc to the ora serrata. So here we have the ora serrata and here we have optic disc. So what happens? The retina is detaching like this, and when whole of the retina is detached, it remains attached to the ora serrata and to the optic disc. So can you see a funnel kind of a thing is formed? This is called as the total funnel shape RD. Total funnel shape RD. So this is very diagnostic on the B scan that you are able to get. This is your bidimensional brightness scan. Okay, what is the frequency that we are using? It is the frequency that we are using is 8 to 10, right? They can sometimes ask you this. Now, how to apply the A scan? Now, as I told you that A scan is actually unidimensional, and we are just having the spikes there. So we are not able to see the 2 dimensions of the eye. So I'm just getting the spikes there like this. So what happens when I'm just getting the spikes? Actually what is happening, I am getting the spikes whenever I am having some dense membranes. So dense membrane, like if you go with the eyeball, suppose this is your eyeball. Okay, so we know already that this cornea is fibrous and this sclera is also fibrous. So the moment I start with the A scan, you will not see the eyeball. Just for reference I am showing you. Okay, now what will happen, when they pass through the cornea, they will give a high echo. When they pass through the sclera, again it will give you a high echo. Okay, now here we have the lens. So at this place you will get a small one like this, and otherwise we are just getting small. So this is a normal A scan that we are getting. And if you revise the thing, that we also use this in cases of the biometry. When we calculate the power of the lens, we use it for the biometry, because there we require the axial length of the eyeball. So what I can do, I can take the distance between the 2 high spike. One was due to the cornea, one was due to the sclera. So obviously this can give me the axial length. So this is the usual use of the A scan, where I can use it to calculate the axial length also. Now how can I use it to confirm the RD? Suppose I am seeing that this is the B scan, and I want to know, though it's very sure it's a total funnel shaped RD, but still, to be 100% sure, and before taking the patient for the RD surgery, what can I do? I can start up with the A scan here. So that is called as a combined A scan and B scan, and we can start having the spikes here. So normally we should have a high spike here. We should have a high spike on the cornea like this, and then I should have a high spike on the sclera, right? But if I'm getting a high spike in the mid also, so that means there is something lying in the vitreous cavity which is very dense enough. Normally, you know, retina is not that fibrous, but when it is a RD, it is due to the vitreoretinal traction. Then in that case it gives a very high spike. So when you are getting this high spike in the mid of the vitreous cavity and you are able to see this funnel shaped RD also, then you are sure that you are dealing with the case of retinal detachment. Now there is one more thing. Sometimes appearance in the vitreous cavity, and I am not sure whether this is a retinal detachment or whether it's a choroidal detachment. What should I do? Again, I can start up with the A scan. Again, I will get one high spike on the cornea, one on the sclera. I will get a high spike in the middle of the vitreous cavity also, but that spike will be like this M-shaped spike. So this M spike that you get, that is evident of the choroidal detachment. So whenever we have a high spike, that means it's a retinal detachment. A high spike, but it is M-shaped, that means it's a choroidal detachment. So this is how A scan and B scan will help you differentiate these things. One more thing, you should also see how the B scans look like in cases of choroidal detachments. Now see this. This is a case of B scan where you are having choroidal detachment. This is your optic nerve shadow, okay, and this is your lens shadow. Can you see one this detachment and one this detachment? So this is the speciality of the choroids. They are not detaching like this. They are detaching like this and this. So basically the superior detachment, inferior detachment, and they are touching each other. That is why it is also called as the kissing choroids. And this is the reason why we are getting a M-shaped spike in cases of choroidal detachment. So most of the times, just by seeing the B scan also, we come to know that actually it is not a choroidal detachment, but we can be very, very sure if I do combined A scan and B scan, I will get a M-shaped spike. Okay, now let us see this. This is a case of the posterior vitreous detachment. Many a times, the vitreous detachment person, if you are undergoing the B scan, he will also give you this kind of appearance. Can you see this one? I have made it yellowish. I will delete it so that you are able to see this. So this is actually a normal physiological finding, and if I am doing the ultrasound of a person who is more than 60, 65, 70 years, I won't even mention that there is a PVD because it's a physiological finding. But suppose you are doing it and you are getting it. Now what is the possibility that you may get confused with the retinal detachment or a choroidal detachment? Suppose the person is coming with a sudden painless diminution of vision, and we have done the B scan, we are getting this. Now I'm getting confused that if it was a PVD, it should not have done the painless diminution of vision. Maybe the painless diminution of vision is taking place due to the RD because it's a RD, or maybe due to any other reason. So what will I do? I will start with the A scan. So if I start with the A scan, and if it is a PVD, then I won't get any spike. So if I am not getting any spike, then I am sure that this is a case of the PVD. So basically now I have learned that if I am getting a RD like thing, I am getting a detachment in the vitreous cavity, I can do the A scan. If I am getting a high spike, it's a retinal detachment. If I am getting a M-shaped spike, that means it's a choroidal detachment, and if I'm not getting any spike, that means it's a vitreous detachment. So now we are pretty sure that it is a case of the retinal detachment. Now once we are very sure, what are the other things that I can do? I can also go with the ERG. What about ERG? Because it's a retinal detachment, RAPD was also present, this will also come to be subnormal. But obviously this is not mandatory. You have already searched for the break, you have applied the Linkoff rule, you have confirmed it with the B scan and A scan. So this is just the supportive evidence. Now let us try to treat it. Treatment is again very, very important because you know that retinal detachment is ophthalmic emergency. At the earliest, you have to do it. Now, what is the first thing that we should do? The first thing is sealing the hole. Sealing the retinal hole, because obviously the hole was the thing that was leading to the RD and everything was following. So that vicious circle was there. So if I am able to stop that retinal hole, then I am able to save that retinal detachment. So how can you seal this? Basically by creating the aseptic chorioretinitis. So I am trying to create artificial inflammation, so the ends becomes inflammatory and they start sealing. So this aseptic chorioretinitis can be done with the help of laser photocoagulation. I can try with the cryo, or I can also use the diathermy. Usually we use this laser photocoagulation. Which laser? Argon laser. Argon laser we are using 514 nanometer, and the mechanism is well known. It is photocoagulation, and we are giving about 200 microns spot size of this laser in order to seal this retinal hole. So once we have actually sealed the retinal hole, I think much of the things are done. And I always advise that if anybody has the high myopia, he should always go through the indirect ophthalmoscopy multiple times, 6 monthly, 1 yearly, to see if there are degenerations, there is a break, there is a hole, so that we can do the laser at the earliest and there is no RD. So this is the first thing that we do. Then number two is that we create a external tamponade. We create an external tamponade. That means if I'm able to see a detachment, so I want to create a external tamponade in order to create the opposition between the layers. So what can I do? I will actually use a scleral buckle. So let's see that how to do this. It is something like this. Suppose this is the eyeball here, so I am coloring it so that you are able to see it. This is the scleral buckle that we are using all around the eyeball. It is actually made up of silicone. It is also called as the scleral buckling. So that scleral buckling is actually done, and we are encircling this sclera all around. That's why it is also called as the encerclage operation. It is also called as encerclage operation. And then we are opposing it back. Then what we are doing, so we have created this scleral buckle like this, and then we oppose it like this, okay, and then give the mattress sutures. Then we try to give the mattress sutures so that it remains opposed. Now suppose we feel that the amount of fluid is very, very large and we are not able to create this opposition. So what can I do? Along with this, the SRF drainage. Now this SRF drainage step is again very, very important, because obviously you will have to use a needle. So we use a flute needle. And we do the SRF drainage. This is done from the vitreous cavity. And while doing this, we have so many risk involved here, so many complications. Like we obviously, first of all, we have the risk of the infection and endophthalmitis, okay. Then there is a risk of retinal perforation. When you are taking the needle inside, there is a risk of retinal perforation, there is a risk of endophthalmitis, there is a risk of choroidal hemorrhage as well as choroidal neovascularization. So that is why you have to be very, very careful. You have got so many risks. Like when we are doing the RD surgery, obviously in antibiotics we must have started, but if you are doing the SRF drainage, give much good coverage so that you don't have any of the thing. We can even use the intravitreal antibiotics also at the same time, and do it with a very, very cautious manner. Then what is the other thing? The fourth thing that we need to do is the internal tamponade. Now once we have done the opposition, SRF drainage if required, we have already sealed the retinal hole, we require something inside the vitreous cavity also that can keep on pushing the retina towards the choroid, towards the sclera, so that the chances of redetachment are not that high. So what can we use for this? I can use the SF6 gas, I can use the C3H8, that is fluorothenes, or we can also use the silicone oil. So depending upon the center's preference and individual choice, we can use this, but the silicone oil is considered to be better, because here we have earlier visual rehabilitation. earlier visual rehabilitation. Also, we have decreased risk of the PVR, that is proliferative vitreoretinopathy. So this has slightly advantages. That's why at our centers also we are preferring the silicone oil. But the problem is that there are certain adverse effects also. So we have certain adverse effects, like we can have secondary glaucoma, the toxic granulomas can be formed, we can have cataract, and we also have the keratopathies. So we cannot be relaxed after giving silicone oil that all well. You have to remove it, basically remove within 8 to 12 weeks. So in generally we say that within 3 months you have to remove it. This is again a MCQ. Less than 3 months you have to remove it, and tell the patient specifically that you have to come for this oil removal, because if he's not coming, then again there are so many things that can take place and he can have even a worse visual outcome. So this is again very, very important. Now another important thing is that how to position the patient. Position of the patient after the surgery, the position of the patient should always be taken care of in order to keep the brake on upper side or the superior side. The position of the patient should be in such a manner that the brake should be on the upper side, and the bubble that you are leaving by the oil or by the gas should oppose it. So these are the two things that should always be taken care of, and though sometimes it becomes very difficult for the person to remain in that position, we ask the patient to remain in the prone position so that the brake comes on the upper side and bubbles keep on pressing it. But yes, you have to do it, and a lot of the prognosis of the surgery will actually depend upon this thing, that whether the patient is actually doing this or not. Now another important thing, what are the complications? Though we are doing this surgery, there are the complications of this surgery, like we had the complications of the cataract surgery. Now one more important thing is that there can be redetachment. So I have seen so many cases where redetachment takes place 3 to 4 times in a year or even 6 months, and their vision goes off less. Then second thing, even the surgery has the chances of going into PVR. So that is a very important thing. Number 3, many times we suffer from diplopia. Why diplopia? Because when we are doing the surgery, there is damage to the extraocular muscles. So you have to be very, very careful while you are doing the surgery, so that we are not giving other problem to the patient. And then fourth, because it was affecting the nutrition. So it can also cause the anterior segment ischemia. So these are the 4 main complications that can take place due to the surgery even. And I will say again, the PVR remains the most important one, that was taking place due to the retinal detachment also, and that is taking place due to the surgery also. Okay, so another important thing that I will like to tell you is this one. Can you see this? Yes, it looks that as if it is upside down. No, this is called as the reverse hypopyon. Which takes place due to the silicone oil. So this is again very important, and sometimes they can give it directly also, just for the spot diagnosis. If you are seeing it on the upper side, this is the reverse hypopyon, and this is seen with the silicone oil.